Thanks a lot for staying with us on TVC Breakfast, this midweek edition. So President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria joined other international leaders in calling for an end to Israel's aggression in Gaza, emphasizing the need to prioritize civilian lives. He reiterated Nigeria's support for a two-state solution, stressing that peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians is the only viable path forward. And he made this argument at the extraordinary Arab-Islamic Summit, which was convened to address the current situation in the Middle East.
To end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and realize the two-state solution. This is urgent and very urgent. Conflict in Palestinian homeland has persisted for too long, inflicting immeasurable suffering on countless lives. As representative of nations that value justice, dignity, and the sanctity of human life, we have a moral obligation to collectively bring about immediate end to this conflict.
And joining us now via Zoom from Belgium is Global Affairs Analyst Colin Sunweke. Thanks a lot for joining us on the program, and it's good to see you again. So President Tinubu has joined several other leaders in Africa and beyond to advocate for a two-state solution. In fact, at some point, U.S. Vice President Harris also, made her own case for a two-state solution. But in terms of how attainable this is, what do you think?
Thank you, Esther. Very good morning to you and the viewers. It's a pleasure to be here again. What I think, the two-states solution has long been proffered. At some point, Israel wasn't against it. At another point, it pulled back. And so the call has been there, and it has been made, from numerous quarters, including the United States, the greatest ally of Israel. Now, whether they meant it or not is, something completely different. So, is it going to happen because President Tinubu has called for it now? No, certainly no, that is not going to be the case. But of course, it is the right call to make. It is the right call to make because, Nigeria can be seen to be lagging behind in international conversations. And the fact that, President Tinubu took this opportunity to make that call is very, very consequential. What it does is that it adds to, the voices of reasons that are calling for, an end to hostilities there, but also that a permanent solution is found to the problem. When exactly is it going to happen? That is unclear, but everyone that is, on the right side of history in calling for a two-state solution ultimately knows that there is no other solution than that. So it remains, negotiations, more conversations, and like President Tinubu said, principled compromises. It is required. And so, the negotiations continue.
Right. And we know that this war dates back years. We've seen world leaders, we've seen Biden, we've seen the UN leader, Antonio Guterres, also calling for this. And of course, with the president adding to this voice. But how likely is it for this to come to an end, considering the questions about the legitimacy of the Palestinians themselves? They are actually, disintegrating in the West Bank. So is it a likely cause, especially when you look at the fact that even the leader of Hamas is, very popular in that region?
Well, I believe that it will happen ultimately, because more and more nations, particularly the Western countries, actually are genuinely calling for it. That's number one. Number two, I believe also that the moment Israel perceives, that it is beginning to lose more and more support of not only the Western countries, but also, some Arab countries that are indeed in talking terms, in friendly relations with them, I believe that that is when they will begin to take it a bit more seriously. Let us also remember that Israel draws oxygen from the United States, both in terms of moral support by always being the first to talk about the fact that Israel has the right to self-defense, as if self-defense should happen in a vacuum, as if self-defense is not something that should happen under rules-based international order where proportionality is very important. And like President Tinubu rightly pointed out, what sort of self-defense do you mount at the cost of children and women dying? That is just not possible. And so the moment the West actually realizes that we are dealing with a recalcitrant Israel that should be called to order and stop supplying arms to Israel, all in the pretext that they are helping them to, defend themselves, I believe that Israel will not see a need to actually, stop the mayhem. Now, is it an easy task? No. It is a very, very complicated issue because some have actually pointed to the impracticality of a two-state solution. Let's not forget that Israel has, over the years, continued to acquire more and more land, up to the, border with Lebanon and everywhere. As a matter of fact, it is estimated that Israel controls well over 70% of, the landmass there. And it's all fragmented. So this two-state solution, how is the map going to be drawn? What about resettlement and all? So there are quite a lot of things, but once the will is there, the negotiation can happen, and then principled compromises borrowing from President Tinubu would then have to be made for it to happen. Complicated, yes. Impossible, absolutely not.
Right, and perhaps the complications might also include the fact that Israel, despite its political affiliations, are also not keen on, don't appear to be keen on this advocacy of a two-state solutions. We hear of, rival parties who are also not exactly excited about the idea. Israel also appears to be unified on this issue of we want to hold on control of Gaza Strip. And the West Bank. But what kind of future do you envision in terms of the actualization of a two-state solution under the Trump presidency?
Well, when I talked about Israel drawing oxygen from, the West, particularly the United States of America, President Trump, President-elect Trump, actually epitomizes that oxygen that Israel draws. Now, I do suspect, and very strongly too, Esther, that things under Tinubu in the Middle East, specifically, in the Gaza-Israel conflict, is going to get worse under President Tinubu because he is one that will be all out to support Israel. So it's a question of, what exactly do you need from me, Israel? And he goes, about doing it, no question asked. Now,
are you talking about President Trump now?
Yes, President Trump, yes.
Right, okay.
Yes. Oh, I may have been mentioning President Tinubu. Sorry
Indeed.
about that. Both names start with T, so you can understand.
No problem. Carry on.
So sorry about that. So you see, so Trump is definitely going to worsen the situation, except except the West and the transatlantic, partners actually get unified, see some partnership among key, Arab states, once that alliance is formed, and then they are able to actually point or actually twist the hands of President Trump, I believe that is the only thing that can make Trump, to rescind them, a little bit. Otherwise, going by, experiences out of his first term as 45th president, we think that, it is not a good omen for global peace in that and final settlement in that region.
And you mentioned something earlier, saying that more nations are genuinely calling for an end to the war. I mean, the genuineness of these nations is something that is possibly up for contest in that sense. We've seen the U.S. Several times call for an end to this war, and we know that the U.S. has a leverage over Israel. I mean, they have the strength, military, politically, even in diplomacy, and this is not coming to an end. If you look at the relationship in the Middle East, and especially with the return of the BRICS itself, and how these nations are trying to take off themselves from the hold of the United States, what's the prospect? What's the prospect of this war ending without the intervention of the United States?
The prospect of the war ending without, United States playing an honest, genuine brokering of the peace, is the chances are very, very slim. Now, when I talked about, more and more countries, calling for a two-state solution, it is not new. And, I actually meant that we have to assess how genuine, those calls are, because it could very well be, and we have seen that, in practical terms, that they use one side of the mouth to call for a two-state solution, and then use the other mouth to tell Israel, get on with it, no problem. And Israel appears to be saying, okay, maybe sometime in the far future, a two-state solution might happen, but before that happens, let us pound them to submission. Let us flatten everything and, make sure that hardly anyone is left there. So that appears to be, their strategy. And so the international, the rule-based international order has got to be invoked in that region, with the UN and all of that playing, more prominent role. Antonio Guterres has, continued to be clear about it. And I think it is by speaking more alliances being formed, genuine alliances, I believe, based on national interest. But national interests here have got to be seen more broadly than, the narrow interpretation that is given to it now, based on historical context and all of that, before we can see the needle being moved, in this conflict.
And talking about the United Nations taking upon itself a more prominent role in dousing the tensions, definitely. Let's also look at some options that analysts have profiled, seeing as you all appear to be unified in the fact that it might not, it's the best option, the two-state solution is the best, but how attainable is it and how soon? That's the big question nobody has yet been able to give a definite answer on. So what about a one-state solution, as some have said, where the Palestinians, the Israeli people would be under one nation, but they will be given equal rights? Or the option of a confederation? What do you think about that? Which do you think is the most plausible?
Well, obviously, Esther, a two-state solution is. Sorry?
It's Kemi, Mr. Nweke.
Kemi. Sorry. I think I should get a stronger coffee to wake up properly. Sorry about that, Kemi.
No problem.
Now, listen. there is obviously no doubt about the fact that the two-state solution is the best option. I think everyone has agreed to that. However, when the first option isn't possible for whatever reason, of course, it's reasonable, it's sensible to consider the second option, which is a one-state solution, a confederation, and all of that. Now, so some people, that is perhaps a recipe for more disaster. As a matter of fact, what we have now is a one-state solution. But of course, the one-state solution that is being proffered as a solution is one that will have some sort of confederation arrangement where every entity in that arrangement has their own super autonomy, not just autonomy, but super autonomy, perhaps even up to the point of sovereignty. And in that case, they would have at the top of that pyramid, the body, central body that actually manages the whole relationship. Now, is it possible? Is it doable? Yes, it is doable. However, it will be complicated, and I believe that more and more people are drifting away from that one-state solution. But you see it resurface when the conflict drags on, and people simply want whatever it is to put in place to end the current escalating crisis.
All right, Mr. Collins Uweke is a fine place to rest this conversation. Of course, it continues, and we do look forward to more contributions from your end on this very burning issue. Thanks a lot again, Mr. Uweke.
Always my pleasure, Kelly. Thank you for having me.
Right. And we went to the streets to ask Nigerians this question. At what point do you think a grown-up should start taking care of his or her own basic needs? And of course, the issue of adulthood is relative, you know, not just in the country, but even beyond. But I think I'm looking forward to what people have to say